So we are live, everybody, and I'll just start right out and say you're only seeing William's screen because there is a problem with our webcams on GoToWebinar. We're not sure what it is, but the more important thing is you're going to get to hear William, you're going to see his slides. Maybe it's because he's in Australia right now and the whole world is turned upside down. So anyway, but thank you, William, as always, for being here. And Mark, thank you for helping. And William, it's all yours.
All right, so just let me know if you guys see this.
Your screen went away, William, and now we're back to the page, the kind of
okay, I'm just trying
transaction.
to. Okay, now we can see, yeah?
There'll be a little delay. I don't have it yet, but let's just see it here in a second. It's not up there yet.
No?
No, not right now. No, we're still back on the original screen, the GoToWebinar screen.
Okay, change presenter. Presenter is me. Is it? Not showing anything. Show. Okay, showing my screen. Can you see my screen now?
Yep, we got your screen now. Now we're cool.
Okay, now it's gone again, huh?
Uh-oh, went away again. I don't know what's happening, but it went back to that other screen. There, now we're back. Something's happening as you're going to go to present.
Here the GoToWebinar control panel is bugging me.
Sorry about that. Don't know what to do. Now there you go. Now we got water system design.
Okay,
so cool. Uh-oh, now it went away again.
Okay, I think it should be fine now.
Yeah. Oh, well, it wasn't. Playing musical screens today.
Now you should see, I think.
Yeah, we see resources and it's the full screen.
Okay, so I'll just start.
Now water system design. Yep.
Okay, I'll just start. Okay, so today I'll be talking about designing water systems of a farm. So we are continuing. Just quick note, I did put the resources for this presentation, and they're on this website. You can go there and just put your email address and name, and you can log in then. Because I'll be showing some calculations today, and to find that, you can go there. So we are here in the whole process. It's water system design. So we went to the whole, we are now in the design phase. We got our base map. We know how to read the landscape. Now we are, the first step is actually designing for water. So what we are all kind of seeing today in the world, and that's, that the weird weather is a new normal. Weather is becoming more and more extreme. That just, maybe in the whole grand scheme of things, maybe that's something completely normal. And, after a time, weather will come back and be normal. Even if that happens, still we are in a period where, the extremes are the new normal. So when it comes to water for a farm, you might have too much or you might have not enough. So there's a whole deal with actually designing for water, because we want to create a resilient and extreme weatherproof systems and boost the overall resilience of the farm. And we do that, with designing for water and having water in mind first. So I'm going to say that there are four main categories of water that are available to a farm, and that's first one, that's absorbed rainfall. That's something that's high quality and low price. and the observatory rainfall is dependent on the quality of soil. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, about developing the topsoil, because this is probably the most cost-effective way to enhance the water cycle and store water on the farm. The second one is runoff from rain falling onto the farm itself. Rainfall, when it starts to drop, once it exceeds the field capacity of the soil, then it starts to run off. I'll touch a little bit on that. So that's the second category. The third one is external sources of water. That would be just water flowing onto a farm that's coming from somewhere higher up in the watershed. And the last one would be groundwater, and we can use that water to pump it on the surface, or use it with a well or something like that. So these are the four main categories. And when it comes to talking about water, we must say that talking about water for a farm, water is the number one priority for any permaculture system. We want to first slow spread and sink that water into the soil as it falls from the sky. That is, if that's necessary. If you are in a condition that you have lack of water, and then once we've done that, our secondary goals would be to capture as much water as reasonably possible, store that water for dry periods, and then distribute that water when necessary across the site. And what's important to say is that water and rainfall will determine the permaculture farm development, because all the features, all the water systems that you put on your farm will become permanent land features, that other infrastructure components will then follow. And I'm going to talk about two basic strategies of water conservation today, and that's storing water in the soil, and the second one is diversion of surface water to dams or ponds and tanks for later use. So whether you're going to use storing water in the soil or storing water on the surface, that totally depends on your local site conditions, on your climate, on your soil, on your context. Okay, so let's talk about storing water in the soil. This is the cheapest way to store water. It is the largest storage resource available on most sites. So our first effort should go into storing water in the soil. And but in order to store that water in the soil, the key to that feature of the soil to store the water is organic matter, and because the organic matter actually acts as a sponge, and to increase soil's holding capacity, we must promote organic matter rich topsoils. And now that's completely to be jumping it forward, because we're going to talk about improving the soil in the later lessons, but I'm just going to touch on keyline design, keyline plowing here, and plowing, and a little bit of swales, and talk about more about them in the later lessons. But just want to give you an overview here. So, as I said, the first effort should go to get water into the ground and store it there. And to get water into the ground, we must shape the land, such as to slow spread and sink water so that sponge organic matter can absorb it. And to do this, we use two very famous permaculture techniques. That's keyline plowing or subsoiling, and swales on the contour. So keyline plowing, with keyline plowing and subsoiling, what we actually do is as you can see in the image, we are creating channels that then hold and distribute water in those channels. And by using the keyline design, we actually evenly distributing water across the farm. That's the first thing. And because we are plowing also, we are, by doing that in combination with moisture, we are turning subsoil into topsoil, and by doing so increasing organic matter. So we are doing two things, distributing the water and turning subsoil into topsoil, and by doing so increasing the water holding capacity of the soil. And the second one is the swales on the contour, which are actually not moving water because they are on the contour, so they are just intercepting large amounts of rainfall. They fill up with water and then they infiltrate that water. And our second strategy of water conservation is storing water on the surface, and we do that with ponds, with tanks. We harvest water with drains or ditches, and then we distribute or reticulate that water with irrigation channels and irrigation pipes. And your above surface water system will depend on how much water you need and how much water you can get from the sky, and what is your budget for earthworks, and do you have enough money to create a pond. So once we'll go through a little bit of planning, but once you know all those things, you can then start with locating your dams. Or even if you don't have the budget right now, it's always good to plan for future pond locations, because one day you might have, and it's necessary, I would say, to have a pond, not just because of water. There are so many functions that the pond can fulfill. We are going to talk a little bit about that later. Okay, so let's do some planning right now, and let's go and assess your site water resources. As I said last time, let's take a big overview. So water is a part of water cycle, and in that water cycle we are mostly concerned with precipitation, with runoff and groundwater. So the first question in planning is what is my average annual rainfall. So this is measured in millimeters, and I don't know, in US probably in inches, and this gives you an idea about how much rain you're getting throughout the year. So it's not just how much you're getting, let's say, through the whole year, that number. It's also how it's distributed throughout the year. Is it coming in being downpours during the summer or during the winter, or it's more equally distributed, like you see on this map. This is for my actually site, so it's kind of equally distributed, and even a lot of it coming during the summer. But that's the deal. This is like a averaged out, and what's happening today is the whole month of August can be without any rain. So, or maybe the July can be without any rain. So if I plant something and those my trees are young, and if I want to provide them water and there is no water in the August, then I have to have a means of storing some water, so I can give them when they need. Okay, so the first is understanding how much rain you are getting. The second is understanding your watershed, so determining your place where you in that hydrologic cycle. And we said last time that every piece of land belongs to a watershed, and this is defined as an area of land that drains runoff from rain or snow downhill from the highest geographical barriers such as hills or ridges and mountains to a specific low point. And this is generally, a river or lake or some kind of creek. In the beginning it's creek, but then it actually ends up being a river. So what you need to understand is that the water movement on your site is going to be a function of where you are in the watershed. So as I said, if you're high in the hill, you'll have a small flow of water. If you're low, you'll have lots of water. So the second thing is understanding your watershed. And we already touched on that also, is that the critical to the process of identifying a watershed and understanding the terrain is understanding the terrain of your site. And for that you need to know how to read the topographical maps. And we said that last time in reading the landscape chapter. I was talking about reading the topographic maps. And by recognizing, the contours for, definition of ridges, saddles, valleys, and gullies, you can then define the water divide lines or center lines on the ridges as the boundaries of your catchment. And here is just an image of, how a catchment might look like. So this is taking a look at the bigger watershed. Okay, so this is just, if you have your site is somewhere, then you first start with analyzing your watershed. So what is the watershed that you belong to? And I call this bigger watershed. So you take a look at your maps, you identify the main ridges. Would be, if you imagine top of the mountain. So if the raindrop drops on one side of the mountain, it goes to completely different way than if it drops on the other side. So you're trying to find and connect those peaks, those ridges that are the water dividing line, and you can do that simply by looking at the topographic maps. As you can see on the left image. The right image is, just a little bit of infographic for you to understand, but the watershed analysis or catchment analysis would look like on the image left. And then, once you understand, okay, so this is the extent of my watershed, you would need to analyze your site's catchment, which can be, a little bit different. So the first thing is, locating, so where is my site in this bigger watershed? And then looking at your site's watershed, or use the sub watershed. And this would be, exactly the watershed of your site. So as you can see on the image right, the little bit of darker area that's marked, this is the watershed of the property, and obviously that property belongs to a bigger watershed, but it's completely different situation. What is your watershed if your site is located on the foothills of this hill, or if it's located, let's say for example, where this creek is flowing? So those are two completely different situations, completely different water situation, and how much water is going to be available. So if you don't have the access to the creek, your water resources are very much limited only to the area of your sub watershed, or everything that's falling or running off from the side of this hill. So that's what we were also saying in reading the landscape chapter, and that's completely different two situations. If you are on the top of the hill, you basically have no watershed. All the water is coming actually down. You can collect maybe from the roof of your house. But if you are somewhere on the side of the on the side of the ridge, you'll have all the water that's actually flowing from that hill two different situations. So you just have to know the extent of your watershed, and to assess your water sites, water resources. Let's go to a simple process. This is, from the taken from the Keyline design, or I took this from I found this from on the internet. But this is how you do the analysis in a Keyline design. When you are trying to understand what is your watershed. So there are three main features, and the first, the looking at topographic map, it will give you a general idea of your watershed's ridge lines. That are the top of the slopes that will determine if water is flowing towards or away from your location. So this is, when you look at this image, this would be the main ridge. Okay, so you try to locate the main ridge. And then once you know what is your water dividing line or main ridge, you can start looking for the primary valleys. And primary valleys, as you're moving down along the main ridge, this will be a succession of valleys that are separated by smaller ridges, and all of them are actually falling towards the creek you are seeing here. So we have primary valleys, and in between we have primary ridges. And because water is always flowing perpendicular to the contours, it has a pattern of flow that is predictable. Okay, so we can, on image left, you can see that how the water actually accumulates into the valleys and then going down to the streams. So once you have a topographic map of your site and looking more closely, then you can see exactly where where is the main ridge, where are the valleys, where are the primary valleys, where are the primary ridges, and based on the understanding of natural water flow patterns, you will know where exactly, what is your sub-watershed and how much water is actually coming through your site. So for example, if you look at this map, the first order of analysis would be, okay, so let's look, where are my ridges, where are my hills, where are my topographic features. So where are my main ridges that are defining my site's catchment, and then doing a little bit of flow analysis, understanding where are the valleys and how water flows through the valleys. You'll have an understanding, how the water picture actually looks like, and you'll be able to, analyze and create the boundaries of your watershed, defined by main ridges, and this would be then surface area of your catchment. You'll be able to understand what is the extent, and essentially able to calculate your surface area of your catchment. So that will be the first step, defining the boundaries of your water catchment. I can't go that much into details, but by understanding topographical maps, where the top of the ridges, where the main water dividing lines, where the primary valleys, where the primary ridges, you can get an idea of your site's watershed. Okay, so the next thing would be, once we've done the catchment analysis, would be defining exactly, what is our water budget, or how much water are you actually getting from the watershed. And there is a simple equation to do this. The first one is said, okay, so the first one is catchment size, and you just, you would just multiply length of the x-axis with y-axis, and you would get surface area. Okay, and then we already know what is our average yearly rainfall, and we would just multiply those two things, and we would get rainfall volumes from that area. So it's an easy equation, but it doesn't stop here, because that would be an idealized situation where you would have 100% of runoff, let's say, getting from a concrete, but because the catchment is made from soil, and soil have different properties, and the intensity is also important. How if the rain is very intense, then you'll have probably more runoff. So it's not as simply to estimate what exactly the runoff volume is, but to get a ballpark estimate, you would need to multiply that rainfall volume with the runoff coefficient. And I found a table from Darren Doherty where where it's a handy table for using to getting that estimate. Okay, so let's say that you know that you have sandy clays on your property, then you would know that, and if you're getting more than 11,000 of millimeters of rain, average annual rainfall, then you would obviously use the number 10 to 15% to get the idea of how much actually there is a runoff from your site. So first you calculate the rainfall volumes, that is catchment area multiplied by average yearly rainfall, and then that number you multiply by runoff coefficient, and then you'll get let's say a ballpark estimate. And then in your planning, of course, so we understand how much, let's say after the calculations, we understand how much water we actually are getting and can get from the site. We didn't calculate in maybe some groundwater, but okay, so this is the runoffs. But you need to estimate your site's water needs, or how much water you need. Are you going to use it just for just as potable water, or you need it for your cattle or whatever, or maybe for irrigation purposes, or fish production, or fire protection, or whatever. You have to estimate how much you need, and how you're going to how you're planning to use that harvested water, and of course your budget and how much you can actually afford to build what kind of water storage. Okay. And once you know all those things, your goals, and how much your water budget is, how much water you're getting from the sky, what is your watershed, then let's go into developing the water systems for your farm. And we have water storage, we have water harvesting, then we have water reticulation. These are the three components of a water system on a farm. And first, let's talk about water storage. So the cheapest way of storing large volumes of water is in a water storage dam or pond. Okay, so pond is in America, dam is in Australia. So, but the thing is, if you need, let's say that you estimated that you need maybe 50,000 liters of water in a certain period. So if you need to store anything less than 100,000 liters of potable water, then maybe a water storage tank is possibly a cheaper and better option. If you need, let's say, more than that, then maybe a pond would be better. And maybe if your site indicates that it's really expensive to build a pond, maybe also a tank would be an option for you. So there is a little bit of doing an investigation about your soils and everything before you actually try to build or decide to build a pond. And what I'm going to say is that generally there are two types of ponds or dams. And the first one is embankment pond, and this is made by building an embankment or a dam across a stream or watercourse, where the stream well is depressed enough to permit storing, let's say, 5 feet or more of water. And the second one is an excavated pond that's made simply by digging, a pit or dugout in a nearly level area. And of course, the excavated one is the most expensive one, the more expensive one. The embankment pond is the cheapest one. We are going to talk about. You're actually going to see why, because embankment pond is just you're building a dam, and just that wall that is actually stopping water, and in an excavated pond you're actually digging in, and it's much cheaper to build an embankment pond. Okay, so this is an image from Pierre Yeoman's property in Australia, and he has all these different ponds, and these ponds are actually all part of the keyline design that he was doing. That's key point dams, but that's based on his terrain. But depending on your topography of the property, you might be able to use or forced to use different types of dams or ponds, and the storage ratio of different dams types and sites is going to be different, and so this is what's going to determine which type of dam you're going to build. There are different storage ratios. There are different situations where you get where you have to dig a lot of soil and might not get so much storage. So that's what it's called, the storage ratio. And different dams have different storage ratios, and the most economic one is actually the key point dam, and we are going to address that one first. And we say that with the first rule with working with water is to keep it in its place of highest potential on the landscape, up high. Of course, if you can put it there, and that's what we are preferring in for both domestic and agricultural purposes. We want that gravity-driven system. We don't want to pump water and be dependent on a pump. We want to be dependent on gravity. And the first step in finding those highest practical economic water holding positions in the landscape is we're going to use a keyline design for that. And there are whole books written about keyline design. The concept originates from Pierre Yeoman, that I already said. Some of you might know him and his concepts, but at the moment, and I won't go into details about the keyline design. I'm going to just say that the keyline design in this situation is going to help us to pinpoint the best dam or pond locations. And here we are actually talking about something that will be called a gully or embankment dam, and you're going to see why. Because the valley is natural depression. You build a dam wall, and this is one of the most common and the most common dams that that are constructed on the farms. They have a good storage ratio where they're where you don't have to exert much effort or put a lot of money into building a pond, and you actually get a lot of storage for your efforts. And I don't know how much we're in, but I have here. Maybe I can see. Maybe I can answer some questions. I'm assuming it's already half an hour or something. If there are questions, I'll see.
Yeah, just a little past a half an hour, and there are a few, not a lot yet, but I'm sure they'll come streaming in. The first one here is from Jorge, and he says the lines on our map should be 20
meters
meter distance.
No, 20 meters is just too much. You should be aiming for, depends on what you can get. If you're getting something that's freely available from the internet, let's say like USGS, that they have their topographic maps, then you're probably going to get, I'm not sure, maybe 20 meters or so. But if you can get 5 meters, that would be beneficial for you. Otherwise, from the standpoint of just defining a watershed, you can do that with 20 meters one. But once you're going to zoom in into your site's sub-watershed, then you would need, let's say, 5 meters. You could still use the 20-meter one, but of course with the maps, the better the map, the better you have the understanding of your site. So that's always a well worth of investment to get a topographic map that's 5 meters or so, or even less. And I was covering that in reading the landscape chapter, how you can actually create a topographic map, contour map, by yourself if you don't have, by using just a GPS and Google Earth, and so maybe you can reference that lesson.
So Cornell asks, is it better to store water in the soil if you're in an arid land rather than dams?
Well, the answer is both. If you're in arid lands, I suggest that you read Brad Lancaster's books, Rainwater Harvesting for Drylands, and he's going actually first into explaining that the first priority is to slow that water, then spread it and then sink. You use that in combination with planting trees and perennial plants that are actually slowing that water. So the first priority goes into storing into the soil. And if you are in arid land, and if you have mostly clay, then of course you would first do some kind of water earthworks to distribute the water, to build the topsoil, to plant plants, so you have organic matter that actually is able to capture that rainfall. And of course you would also, if the budget can allow, you can build a dam and then store water there if there is an extra runoff. So because at a certain point the soil won't be able to absorb all that rainfall, and then the runoff will start. Okay, so, and that runoff, of course, you want to capture it. Okay, so once the field capacity, it's called the field capacity of soil, is reached, you get runoff, and all that runoff that is extra going somewhere, probably going out, away from your site, you want to capture that in a dam if you can. But first, the small and easy solution would be some kind of water harvesting earthworks that are going to distribute, slow, spread, and sink water, and then building small dams or ponds, whatever.
So the next question is, I think it's more broadly from Roberto, who's saying, great talk, can you talk more on key lines, the step-by-step? I think he wants you to teach a whole PDC course. But can you talk more about the step-by-step method one would use when using key line, plow, or pond, or where we can get more info on this? Well, that's
I'll talk. Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about keyline right now, but mostly about keyline and identifying keyline ponds. In the later lessons, I'll be talking about keyline plowing and using keyline as a method of developing a layout for the farm. So I'll be talking about the keyline a little bit later, a little bit now. But to get more info, you would go to the site that I recommended in the beginning. Okay, and this is the resources. You go to my site, thepermacultureapprentice.com /eat, and then you log in there, and you'll have I'll have some info.
And William, for some reason, now we're back. Your slides aren't up there again now. While you might be thinking about that, Kim asks, can keyline plowing be done on rocky soil or areas where bedrock is near the surface, i.e. high in the watershed?
Keyline plow, well, how deep? What are we talking? Because I'm on a limestone, and I have probably half a meter. I don't know how much that is in feet, but maybe 1 feet or 2 feet or whatever of no subsoil, just maybe topsoil on the rock, and I was doing keyline swales. The idea is with a keyline plow is to turn subsoil into topsoil. Okay, so but if you don't have topsoil, if you don't have subsoil, then you don't have anything to turn from then you don't have anything to turn into topsoil. So maybe in that sense, you would be using keyline plowing, but more for distributing water from one place to another. But then it all depends on the terrain shape, because there is a keyline design that you would be using on the ridges. But I can't go into that at the moment. Maybe I can get back to you with maybe some more concrete answer if you need. But for now, I'm just going to say that it would be rather easy. It would be rather easier to do some kind of water, maybe some kind of swales or maybe something different than plowing that close to the rocks.
Okay. Alyssa says, I would like to know how keyline applies to someone whose land is virtually all flat. Seems like that's rarely talked about.
Well, that's because the keyline design is specifically made for undulating terrain. So when you have actually terrain, if you are in a flat, but Pierre Yomas in his book actually says there is no such thing as completely flat. Of course there is, but even the small tiny difference in terrain would be something that you could work with. Maybe you wouldn't. The whole idea with a keyline is to distribute. The first is to distribute the water from where the water is abundant to where water is scarce. So that's usually what's happening from the where the water is concentrated in the valley to the ridges. Okay, if you're in a flat land, then water is already equally distributed. There is no terrain, so everything that drops there, and the water is actually not flowing. If it's flowing, then obviously your terrain is not flat. If it is really flat, then there is no need to equally distribute the water, because everything that drops stays there, so the water is distributed equally. There is no need for distributing that water. But if you're talking, let's say, if you're talking about keyline design for establishing trees and developing a layout, then it's a completely different. It's not completely different, but it's a different subject. I won't be I will be talking about that in the next lessons.
Well, you're going to keep getting them, William. Do you want to keep answering, or do you want to go on?
No, I'll just go, because we'll go
ahead.
over, and then I'll answer them later. And people can always contact me on the email if they have more questions. All right. Just let me know if you're seeing my screen.
Yeah, we are. Well, we were. We're not now. Okay, there. I bet we're going to in a second.
Okay. Now,
Seems like you have to go through a couple steps with the way that that GoToWebinar is treating us today.
can you see
There
now?
you go. There.
Okay.
Yep, you're there.
Okay, so let's talk about. So we said that we're going to use keyline design to identify, the highest holding positions that are economical. Okay, of course you can build on the top of the hill, but that top of the hill then top of the hill doesn't have watershed. That's first. Okay, so it doesn't have any watershed. You have to pump water obviously there. But building in the valleys is the most economical way. Okay. So as I said, we're using keyline design for that, and to do that, and what we're trying to do is something to identify a key point dam, and we do that first by identifying where the key point actually is in the landscape, and so to find that key point, we need to know where is the point of inflection in that valley. Okay, and the point of inflection is where the hill goes from convex to concave curve. And if you look at the left image, you can see where that point of inflection is. Okay, and the key point is just a little bit lower downhill from that point where the hill goes from convex to concave. So just a little bit lower from that point of inflection. So on the steeper slopes, the key point is close to the inflection point. On more gentle slopes, the key point is farther away from the inflection point. And there is a point of discussion about where that inflection point, where the key point actually exactly is, but some people might use this inflection point as the key point, and personally I don't think there's so much difference. It's not the same. The pioneers actually said the key point is a little bit further down the hill, but for you, we are just going to talk first about understanding the keyline design. So the first thing would be finding, looking at your valley profile, and then finding point of the inflection. So the key point will be a little bit further down from there, or even if you choose the point of inflection, you'll be much better off than somewhere building a dam somewhere without any reference to any keyline design methodology. But this is looking at that. This is just theoretically. I'm going to say that you're going to move back to the topographical, it's not topographical, but this model that I was showing before. So to find a key point in your landscape, you first, of course, look at where is your main ridge, where are your primary valleys, where are your primary ridges, and looking at primary valleys, you're going to, we already discussed it, natural flow of water is that water naturally concentrates in the primary valleys. So this is what's important. You're looking key point in the primary valleys. You're not looking at it on the primary ridges. So you first identify where are your primary valleys, and then once you zoom in and look at the contours of that primary valley, you're going to see that there is a certain point where the contour lines begin to get further apart. Okay, so this means when the contours are closer, that's a steeper slope. When they start to get further away, that means that the whole area is flattening. So the key point would be somewhere in this area. The key point would be found where the contour lines shift from moving closer together to moving further apart. And as we said, you can see that. Okay, so we have steep slopes, and then you see that after this one, after this key point, the whole valley is starting to flatten. So our key point would be somewhere there, as we described it earlier. Just a little bit downhill from the inflection point. But the thing is, maybe you can look at the topographic maps as much as you want, but you just need to go outside to be able to identify where that key point is, and you are able to see it where you notice more lush grass growth, more organic matter, maybe deeper soil, as you can see in these images. It's subtle, but it's there. You can see that the grass is greener, on those two images where the key point is. I wouldn't say, the whole thing with keyline design and key points is, can be highly, religious for some people. I'm going to say that while there might be only one specific key point, in practice, in real life, what matters is that you get as close as you can. So this is as long as you're a little bit downhill from the inflection point, you'll be all right. So this is this is on the site itself how you would identify. And once you have the key point, then the line that is going through that key point, that's the key line, so-called the key line. That is actually the control line that's actually going through the key point. And that key line is actually is a control line that goes through the key point, as I said, but this is the highest contour of the land that can effectively hold water. So once you find a key point, you're going to find that point. You're going to find a contour that is the highest point of the land that can effectively hold water. So let's look at simple example. And this is also what Mark Shepard has showed us when I was on one of his presentation. Exactly this example, because it's rather easy to understand. So so obviously you have some kind of valley, and obviously you can see the more lush grass growth. So obviously the key line, the key point would be somewhere there. Okay, so once we located where that key point would be, the inflection point will be probably somewhere further up. But okay, this is our key point. So we know that once we locate the key point, we know that the contour that is going through that point is actually the key line, and this is how we can now then design our key point dam. We know that this is the highest practical construction point in the hill profile. The blue line in this image would be our key line, and this would be the contour that can be also used for water drains, that may be connected for to other dams or whatever. We're going to see that later, but this is how we would, let's say, mentally visualize where your point could be, and the reasoning behind. Now I'm going to show you an example that I found from one of the videos of Jeff Lawton. So I took some print screens or whatever, and I'm going to show you right now how Jeff does it. It's a little bit maybe when he's explaining, it's a little bit maybe more general in nature, but it's not that exact. But what we are seeing here is that the whole terrain, we can see that this is a sort of a valley. Okay, so with the contour lines, obviously the bottom of the image is the high ground, and this is, as it goes, this is some sort of a valley. And what happens in the valleys, you have all these little streams that are forming, and then eventually flowing into a bigger creek. So what he is doing, he is actually finding a contour that is the highest water holding position in the landscape. Okay, so this is the contour that is in blue, and this actually contours contour dam now intersects, valleys of those streams. Okay, so this is the primary valley. So the whole image would be like a one big valley, and these little streams would have like a secondary valleys in them. So what he is doing here, first he's finding that contour, okay, that actually intersects all these little streams, and then he actually constructs dams in those streams, and we can say that, for example, in all these small valleys of these streams, you can find key points and key lines, and by doing so, then you can design, of course, your key point dams. And from the image, you can see that all these actual dams are connected, and this can be some kind of swale. Obviously this is a swale because it's on the same contour. So obviously this could be like a common key line to all these valleys. Maybe that's not happening in real life, maybe it is, but for the general purpose of just explaining, this could be a situation that you can use also on your farm, because it would be rather easy to construct them all on a contour line, intersecting small streams like that, and then connect them so the overflow is going from one to another and to another again. So this would be little example from Jeff Lawton, and this is something that I found from Darren Doherty. So you can see the key point dam marked in blue, and this is kind of the same process that Jeff Lawton is using. First, we interpret the geography of the site, mark the ridges and then valleys. Then we find the highest point in the landscape where we can design a dam, and we use our understanding, or where the valleys are. Okay, and then we can see the green is actually the dam. Okay, so that is the wall, actually the dam wall that is actually intersecting, building that embankment and holding the water in that valley. And just another example that you can reference also is, first we find, this image, first we find, of course, the main ridges. We define the topography, we find where the valleys are, we find where the key points in those valleys are, and then we can design our key point dams. So that would be, if your terrain allows for that, this would be the most economical way to build a pond on your site. Okay, so as you can see, on the image right, this is the key point dam. So there is some sort of valley there, and this is the dam wall that is actually built as an embankment, and it's holding water. And the main use of key line dam would be, to store it for irrigation purposes. I won't go into the whole explaining of that, but usually what they do in key point dams are, there is an irrigation pipe underneath, and that water is released for irrigation. You won't use it for potable water to drink it, but for irrigation, it's a great way to store water. And I'll just touch on different ones, because of course not everybody has a simple terrain like that to find a key point. Maybe you can build something that's called like a bridge point dam. This is usually built on flattened ridges, on a descending ridge line. So when you look at the image, so these are the contour lines. Obviously the ridge is actually falling on towards the left, and as soon as it starts to flatten, then you can build your dam there. This is also, we are aiming for holding water high in the landscape. So if you're doing on the ridge, obviously you're holding it high in the landscape. Then another one is also a saddle dam. The saddle dam on topographic map actually looks like you have two hills, two peaks on both sides, and in the middle, this is what's called a saddle. So of course, because it's obviously we have that could be a saddle, could be just simply a dip in the ridgeline. So obviously that's another high in the landscape water holding position that you can use. The actual watershed is it's a little bit limited because you have only maybe those two peaks are your actual watershed. Maybe you can pump, maybe you don't, but this is also potentially a solution. And then we have points for the flat sites. Maybe this would be your only solution. So first we have excavated tanks, where the excavation becomes the water storage and water is stored below the surface level, or maybe in a ring tank or dam. This is constructed on earth to low sloping ground, and by using the earth from inside the ring to build the surrounding embankment, as you can see from the profile. Or a turkey nest dam, which is similar with the ring tanks. The water is stored above ground level, similar like in the ring tank. And this is not as economically as let's say for example the valley dam, but maybe this would be your only solution to store some water, and maybe you have a well and you can pump and you can fill them out. So it's not as easy as just build a key point dam. Sometimes you just don't have a key point. Maybe your terrain is a little bit different. So there are different options that you can use. And then let's say, for example, that maybe you can't put a pond high in the landscape, but maybe you can put a large water tank there and then use it for irrigation purposes or what. So you want to put your that would be called a header water tank at a high spectacle point somewhere on your property, and then if you have only solutions for having dams or ponds lower in the landscape, then you would pump the water to your water tank. And this is, for example, something that David Holmgren once was on his property. This actual tank is from his property, where he has two ponds that are lower in the landscape. Okay, they are much lower in the landscape, and he has a header water tank on the top of the property where he actually pumps the water from the dam. So it's not as simple as say, you're not doing it right because you're not using the key point. You're not using the key point dam to store water high in the landscape. Maybe your terrain is only allowing for key point dam being lower in the landscape, and that's not high enough for you to use the gravity, and then you have to use a tank or something. So there is no simple answer to your water situation. So this is an overview so you can see what you are able to use in your design. And then let's move to water harvesting. And once you have, for example, your storages, you can then find a way to extend the way that you're harvesting that water and moving that water. So this can be done with what we call harvesting drains or ditches. And here I'm just going to explain two types of harvesting drains or ditches, and that's going to be, of course, a swale, and that's going to be something like a diversion drain that we're going to call diversion drain. So I don't need to spend much time on swales, but swales are on the contour. So the whole point of a swale is not actually moving water from one place to another, because they are on a contour. They're just intercepting water and then slowly, allowing that water to percolate into the soil. But as we, I'll show a little bit later, but you can use swale as a means of connecting multiple, let's say, ponds that are on the same contour, and then in a sense not moving water but rather connecting. And the second one would be the diversion drains. The diversion drains, they're different from swales because they're not dead level. Okay, so they're placed in the landscape off contour. They have a slight gradient with the goal of moving water to a specific location. And that specific location can be pond, tank, creek, or whatever you want. So they are actually not, in a sense, trying to infiltrate the water. Okay, they are trying to move the water and because of that function, it would be ideal that they have some kind of clay as the clay lined, to say. Okay, so rather than allowing water to infiltrate, they're moving it. And if they can be from concrete, even better, because then they have 100% of runoff. But you can also use a combination. You can use, let's say, a diversion swale, and diversion swale would be something that has a slight gradient, but because they are something like a swale, and then they have that contour. Not contour. They actually have that a small bank. They are actually allowing for water as it's flowing, obviously down the hill, to slowly also infiltrate. So there is a combination that you can use. So just two examples. So, for example, the right image is that something that I was showing you from Jeff Lawton. Okay, so obviously these are the swales that are connecting dams, and that's what you always want to think, because even if you have a dam, you have to have a planned spillway. Okay, so what's going to happen when the dam is full? Obviously, water needs to go somewhere, so you need to either design for a drain, some kind of diversion ditch that's going to move that water somewhere else, maybe to another pond that's located, lower in the landscape. That can be like a cascading ponds, or maybe you can design a swale to connect to other features. So maybe your overflow can be a swale that's then planted with trees, connected to another pond. That's how usually Jeff Lawton does it. He designs multiple ponds on the same contour connected with a swale. Or maybe you can do it like Darren Doherty is doing it with what he has here. He has two dams, okay, that are located. That's probably a hillside dam, because they're located on the same contour, but they are connected with some sort of diversion drains also, because as you can see, maybe you can see from the image that the arrows are pointing that the overflow from one dam is actually going to another one. And from the lower side of the image, these are the harvesting drains that are actually filling the dams. So one is going from the house, obviously, the roof runoff is going into the dam. Another one is also the other dam, or on the right, is also having a harvesting drain that is also filling the drain. So just as a point of reference, you can think about, okay, so I need to design harvesting drains that are going to fill my ponds, and I need to think about how I'm going to my pond when it overflows, where that water resource is going. Is going into the swale, is going into some kind of diversion ditch going somewhere else. So these are the harvesting harvesting or diversion ditches that you can design. And finally, we have moving or reticulating that water, and for that, again, you can use diversion drains, as I said, but now the function of these diversion drains would be to be used as a flow irrigation for, of course, irrigation purposes. And water is directed from a dam into that drain. It fills up, overflows, and it goes, where it's necessary to some kind of crops or paddocks or whatever. Or, this is all left image. Lower left image is something that Mark Shepard has actually constructed. And that, as you can see, this is like a simple channel that is just channeling water where it's needed. Or maybe, on the right image, this is like a more, obviously, something more bigger, in a sense that, as you can see, the outflow is actually going, the flow of water is actually going from the pipe that is probably from a key point dam, and then moving that water in a big channel to somewhere where it's needed to irrigate. And then another way to use that, store water would be, with the irrigation pipes. For this, obviously you need to develop a network of irrigation pipes that you're going to use. And I give an example here of the left image is David Holmgren. As I said, so he has 2 big dams, and then the dam water is pumped to the tank, released from the tank into irrigation network that he has for his orchards. The similar is with Darren Doherty. The same image we saw, the right image that we are now looking is, as you can see, the green black lines. This is actually the irrigation pipes the irrigation pipe network that he developed. Usually, the best location for irrigation pipe network is on the ridges, and by doing that, you can develop a network and network of gravity of irrigation pipes, and then its gravity. You feed the water by a tank or some kind of dam that is high in the landscape. So this would be the final. So you have water harvesting and water reticulation. So water storage, water harvesting, water reticulation, and basically that's it. So let's hear some questions.
All right. Yeah, there's a bunch of them. Before then, though, real quick, just because before we're having some massive problems right now with our Kajabi website, everybody. And we're in contact. I mean, literally, they all started right during this webinar, and we've been going back and forth trying to figure out. So any of you, if you try to go to your site in the next little bit, you're not going to get in. It'll look like a real mess. We're trying our best with Kajabi, with their support team. So just want to let everybody know that. All right, so back to William's questions. Lots of them here, William. Let's see. Any reading suggestions for reading the landscape and finding watershed from Jan?
Again, just go to the website that I was, to my website and then /eat, and you'll find that resources for the last time for reading the landscape. Basically, the whole lesson that I was doing last time, the reading the landscape, was 2 sessions, and I was explaining how to look at different natural resources on the land, a little bit of watershed, but maybe you can contact me and I can give you some resources more. But finding a watershed, I explained it even better in this presentation, but of course I can't go into directly just focusing on that. So just if you don't know how to find, just do usual Google search and you'll find how to define a watershed. And
I went into it. I went into it in some detail in my series on ecological aquaculture, also at Williams. So there's lots of resources. Jan's a really great new member, and he's just asking tons of questions of every speaker. He's awesome, but he's starting from ground zero on lots of things. Kim says that that property she talked about before that had bedrock near the surface, she said it's about a foot to bedrock in some places. She was asking about keyline plowing. If you remember that other question.
I remember. So she said barely 1 feet of bedrock. Well, that's the thing. Why do you have only 1 feet of bedrock? Is it really steep terrain? If it is really steep terrain, then you don't have any you shouldn't be cultivating that land. That land should be, left for forest to take over, but your forest, of course. So it all depends, why there is only 1 feet of until the bedrock. So
that's a great thought. There's a bunch more here, so I'm going to keep moving on.
Yeah.
So the next one is from Jorge. In areas with lots of rain, 3,000 millimeters per year, how can we manage the water? Normally the soils in the tropics are not capable to store water.
Well, obviously you have too much water, so then the point is how to move that water, let's say, much quicker, so it doesn't bring you trouble. So it would be some kind of earthworks that would be moving that water quicker, and that could be some kind of the field capacity obviously is reached pretty quickly. As I said, as you said, the soils are not capable to store water. That means that their field capacity is reached already. So you just need to think about how to move that water quicker from the property, obviously by using some sort of diversion ditches, and seeing, just doing a little bit of reading the landscape, because of the terrain, the shape of the terrain will make, different water situations. So that means that some areas will be more saturated with water, some will be less. So first analyze where is that happening, what's happening, and then the areas that are really saturated with water, find a way to build some kind of drains that are going to move that water quicker, if that's a problem. So if you're saying, okay, so I have a lot of rain, so if the drain is dropping and then just flowing, giving you no trouble, then you're fine. If the rain is falling and giving you a lot of trouble, because obviously some areas are, much more saturated, some areas are not, some areas are transformed into some kind of flooded area, then you need to move that water from that flooded area somewhere, building the diversion drains or something like that.
All right, that makes sense. Leslie asks, while keyline ponds on some of the properties we are looking at will be perfect, here on our own land, we have a 1 millimeter difference from side to side, not millimeter, 1 meter difference. Central to that, there is a dry stone wall. I think you probably addressed that a little bit about flat land is really not. But anyway, so she says we've got really flat land, and there's a 1 meter high stone wall. Would this be the best place to use as an embankment zone to a pond? I guess she's actually saying can you put a pond there.
We have 1 meter difference side to side. Maybe, I'm not sure. I can't give you a straight answer. I'm having troubles with visualizing how that actually looks like. Try to contact me and send me some images, and maybe we can then discuss that. Do some observations, take some images, send me an email, and we can talk further. Okay, so Cornell says, is the key point at the top of the dam or in the middle? The key point would be the top of the dam. Okay, so the key point and the key line that is going through the that contour that goes to the key point would be actually the top of the dam. So this is the place where you would be designing your overflow. So this is the contour line that would be the highest how your water is going to be highest water level of that water in the dam. Okay, so how would you store potable water? Well, potable water, you wouldn't store it in the dam. So that is kind of the rule. The general rule is, depending on what you need that water, that's how you store it. So if you need water for irrigation purposes, you store it in the dam. If you need potable water, you collect your roof runoff into a tank that is close to your house, and then you drink that. Or you won't need that depending on the climate. The tank doesn't need to be that huge. Potable water, near the house.
So you're looking at in there. Do you see that